right, we've got our players seated here. Austin Shin and Sammy Okosagah. Sam, it says a lot that Austin, a player of his caliber, has started 3-5, but actually he had a slow start at SPC last week, and he still finished in very strong fashion. So really a guy who absolutely has no quit in him at any point. So despite that record for Austin, I still expect a fantastic game here.
Yeah, he was 1-5 at SPC. And
Oh
I
my
mean, he
God, that
finished
bad.
and then he was in like fourth, like pretty quickly after. So yeah, fortunes can change, it's a long tournament, relatively speaking, 31 games, and yeah, he's got his rack.
There he goes. All right, he's good. He's very likely, I would assume, to play something like Vapor extremely fast. But on the other hand, Sammy Okosagah, one of my favorite players to watch, a really, really cool guy. It's been my pleasure to play him a handful of times in my own career. I would say that I think by his own admission, he hasn't spent as much time studying words as he used to maybe a decade or so ago, but he is still an extremely fearsome opponent. Not somebody that I would feel confident about sitting across the board from me, as we do see Vapor go down there. So yeah, these two players extremely strong, both of them, and let's hope the tiles cooperate to give us a good viewing experience here. Was there anything other than Vapor even worth consideration there?
No, I mean, I guess you could play Parvo if you don't want to expose that, sort of these parallel plays, right? Like, you can imagine if he had played, well, I guess if he played Parvo, Sammy would have had a spot for Cots. But I probably would have played Vapor, but I think maybe Parvo, some folks would want to, knock out those overlaps. And Sammy's found a nice play here. He's found his double-double of Hatera for 40 points. So that's a huge find. He was really going to struggle with this, and this gives him, not only is it his best score well, but it's 6 tiles he's turning over to try to get an I or a U to play that, get rid of that Q.
Yeah, crazy how fast he came up with that. With the Q left over on Sammy's rack, of course, you're going to want to be thinking about how can I use that Q. But this play, scoring 40, definitely the best. Doesn't look like he got a ton of help for that Q, but look how annoying this is from Austin's POV with the 7-letter word gray date spelled out on his rack, yet it does not fit anywhere on the board. Even with a couple nice hooks available on the board, in particular, you could put an E. Oops, sorry about that. I keep making that same mistake. It's totally on my end. Yeah, this E right here, this E hook is so lucrative, but gray date does not place that E in the right spot. So, that being said, what should Austin do? He could potentially just play GAD right here, setting up another spot for his E going across. He does have one really extra cool play, though. And it has been shouted out in the chat by former World Cup. Is he defending World Cup champion Ben Schönbrunn? Yeah, he is. So at the end of this weekend, he will no longer be the World Cup champion, but currently Ben Schönbrunn in the chat, nice to have you, shouting out adapter here. Look at how crazy of a play that is, Sam, with all those overlaps.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of this play we just saw from Sammy, in the sense that it's kind of not the first place you look. Like, you might not look at the double-double when you've got a Q and you've got overlaps, but that's your best play. And similarly, you might, you're going to look for bingos. You might look to dump off a few letters with something like GAD, like you mentioned. You might not look for a big parallel play there. It just doesn't look promising, sort of at first glance. So sometimes your best play is in these kind of spots that don't often occur. And personally, I find that a lot of I miss a lot of these several overlap plays. They come up frequently every couple of games, or almost every game, 5-6 tile overlaps, and they're very lucrative, of course, because you're literally forming 7 words if you play adapter.
Yeah, 38 points, leaving just the G. It is similar to Sammy's previous play in the sense that the G is probably the tile that Austin, maybe the A because he has 2 of them, but other than that, the G is definitely the number 1 tile that he wants to use here. So from his perspective, very easy to be focusing on plays. And to be clear, a play like Gad is very, very strong. I'm not even sure Adapter is necessarily better than this play because even though Adapter scores 17 more points, this leave is so powerful, especially after setting up a second E hook. So many of Austin's bingos are going to play in 2 spots on the board with the EGAD or Hetira hook. And not the draw that he was hoping for there, with the J and another G finding its way onto Austin's rack there, though, Sam.
Definitely not. Yeah, that would be an interesting one to run through a computer simulation or, to see what folks think. I would kind of lean towards adapter, just scoring so well. And you're also making it very difficult for Sammy to make plays. So there's some defensive merit there. But both plays have their strengths. Meanwhile, Sammy, he is going to be able to get rid of that Q, not in a great way, but he has Trank set up through, short for tranquilizer, through the A and Hetera. Unless he has a great play, I guess he's considering re-torn and just keeping that Q by itself again on his rack. So that's an interesting option as well. He could also do something like retro, I guess, which is sort of the same idea as retorn, but a few different options for Sammy.
Yeah, that's so interesting to think about playing retorn here. It scores 11 more points than Trank. And as good as Trank is to, obviously, you're getting rid of that Q and getting yourself out of trouble with it. Anytime that Austin has an S and doesn't have a bingo with it, you are seeding a pretty huge counterplay with an S hook on Tranks some of the time, stuff that isn't a bingo, but SH, SW, SK, any of those combinations start to hit significantly harder after Trank compared to retorn. So I feel like that's surprisingly, when you actually look at the simulation of those plays, retorn appears to do a little bit better on that basis. But that is surprising to me. I feel like I would be looking to dump that Q while I have a decent play that does so. Looks like Sammy's agonizing back and forth. Impressive patience on his part to hold on to the Q. I guess there are no U's or I's on the board here, Sam. The odds are great that Sammy gets help for that Q.
It's a nice play. It's very interesting that this simulates the best, according to your computer analysis. Sammy describes himself as a defensive player. He doesn't like giving his opponent easy spots. He's a member of our DC club. We have there's a couple DC clubs, but we have one that Sammy plays at, as well as SPC Cons champion Josh Castellano, as well as Nit Yachagti in the chat and on the commentary booth. So this definitely feels like Sammy's style, that defensive style that he talks about at the club. He doesn't want to give Austin that big spot, like you said. Gad could. It wouldn't be surprising if Austin had retained an S on his rack after Gad. Now, he might not have. He didn't, as we saw, but he could have. So it's a good play. He has drawn an I. He could play Chi now with Chi and Gi next to Gad next turn. So he'll be able to dig himself out finally from that Q, while Austin is going to have to get rid of that J, or he's going to want to score a lot with his J and try to set himself up for a bingo next turn, maybe with that EGAD hook.
Sorry about that. Yes, you're totally right. Notice that Austin had Jaeger set up on his rack that would have extended a little bit further with all of those extra letters. But Jag instead looks like an absolutely correct choice to keep all those good bingo tiles together. And look at this Q hitting the board, Sammy playing his Q and giving Austin a place to play a bingo off of that Q. That is not how I saw this exchange proceeding, Sam, at all.
Not at all. It's surprising. It's unlikely, of course, to have any bingo starting with a Q. Though we did see a bingo with a Q last turn in Pratik from Dave Wiegand. Well, he had two blanks to go along with it. Austin did have other bingos. He had Suetier, more abounding in more suet, I guess. Right. So he had other. Even if the Q didn't come on the board, he was going to play that. Parallel to Retorn. But this will score more. He's going to get that 20 points for his Q. So Austin's certainly happy to see the Q hit the board and to get the first bingo in this game.
Yeah, for sure. I just think from Sammy's perspective, what he was likely to be worrying about after his play of Chi is what happens if Austin has an I and can just hammer me on this triple. That's what I would have been worried about. I would not have been expecting that this Q would yield a bingo to my opponent there. But that Scrabble, sometimes the less likely outcome is what materializes in the game. So back over to Sammy. His letters are not the best. He's got that V that's kind of if you could just trade that V out for practically a lot of other consonants here, he'd be potentially bingoing here. Instead, he's going to have to contend with several of those high point consonants all on his rack at once. Curious to see what direction he goes here.
Yeah, it looks like one of those racks where you can score. I'm looking at this rack and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to get a good score out of this. I'm going to score 30, 40 points somewhere. I'm going to use that V. But I'm looking and I'm not seeing anything immediately. So maybe there is something, and sometimes you just don't have it. It looks like he is now, he's lined up Cheven, right? That's a word, I believe.
Yeah.
Through that E in quieter. So that's kind of the idea that I was saying. You're going to score in the 30s. You're going to offload that V, and you'll keep some decent letters. And he's not going to mind opening the board up. I know I said he's a defensive player, but Sammy's savvy enough to know that when you're trailing in the game, you need to open opportunities for yourself to get lucky to come back in this game. And you just have to hope that your opponent doesn't have the letters to take too much advantage of the spots you're opening. He's opening a triple line on the top row through the C, and he's opening a potentially lucrative double column parallel to the EN in Cheven. Thanks, Will, for your telestration, as always.
Of course.
So some great possibilities. Austin does have a balanced rack, but not necessarily one that can really hammer anything, at least not to my immediate glance. It looks more like a fishing rack. He might play like and just sort of go fishing here.
Yeah, a couple good places for that Y. I do want to point out one crazy option that Sammy had. I'm not sure if I've seen it in the chat. He could have played with his N right here. He could have played hanched right here, leaving the V on his rack. EV would have been his leave. That would have scored 40 points. Very difficult to quibble too much with his choice of Cheven, leaving the much better ED leave, but he had extra 10 points on offer if he wanted to play it a little bit safer. That being said, he's drawn smudge on his rack, so I do expect Sammy to see that word and figure out a place to play it, even if it's just something like smudges right here off of the S of quieters. I do expect to see Austin play his Y and his E. You suggested this play, Sam, I believe, right? This would give back a huge place for Sammy to play. Maybe Austin will take a small sacrifice to play here instead. What do you think?
Well, I hadn't even seen the spot with the H, actually. I was thinking of that spot under Joe making joy. I was just pronouncing Y-E, yeah. So it's a tough decision. I'm not sure the point difference there. So depending on it, you might not be too, maybe he would be worried about setting up that row one. An interesting play with hanched. I did not know that word, and that would be a huge play, and we have a huge possibility here. If Sammy
Wow.
sees one of his two spellings of that bingo, he's going to, as you said, play for 90 points or so and equalize the game.
I'd be surprised if we didn't see him lay this down. Here it comes. There it is, fast. So he's playing smudge for 92. I guess the other spelling uh, puts the D here for 1 extra point. So maybe just the tiniest little oversight on his part, or maybe he doesn't know the spelling of this word, which is Smooged. Either way, great job by Sammy to get right back in the game with that 92-point bomb of a bingo. Austin has great tiles, but Sammy, you never know. Austin has now an easy place to bomb his X. But if Sammy draws a really good rack, maybe that has a blank in it, you could see him play something right here in that spot that Shevin set up and potentially somehow seize control of this game again, depending on his draw. Looks like Austin's considering challenging this word, Sam.
That's right. We've seen a lot of these tactical games between the first game this morning and some of the Collins games from yesterday. So far, this turning out to be a bit more of a play finding, word finding battle. I do wonder, it's possible Sammy didn't know the alternate spelling of smudge or overlooked it. He also is a fast player. We can see he has made 5 moves in under 6 minutes. So he's when I play him, he usually finishes with more than 10 minutes on the clock. So when you play quick, sometimes if you play quickly, you can, but it might just be an oversight. And it does look like Austin has accepted this play without a challenge correctly. And Sammy's drawing those crucial next set of 7 lemons.
Yeah, crucial draw, but not exactly what Sammy wants. He would have loved to see one of those 2 blanks. Instead, Austin making his clear best play of axe. Note that is definitely better than X in the same spot to make sure he's holding on to that E with all these other nice bingo tiles. The board is quite good for bingos here. This spot still looming very large. In fact, unless Sammy has a really compelling reason to leave it alone, I think he's likely to play here right now just because he's not going to want Austin to have a crack at just ending the game with something huge there.
Do you know what he's setting up with this Illwood on his rack? Is he thinking of a word, or is he just sort of, because wood wouldn't, if he's going to play, he would rather play Wold, Woold, parallel to Shevin. That seems like a better play. I don't see anywhere that wood would really do much of anything. So, and I don't know of any words that really look like that. So it's possible he's considering an invalid word, or maybe he's just arranged his tiles like this, at happenstance.
Yeah, I would be shocked to see him go crazy here with something totally, made up from the dictionary. Yeah, he's going to go ahead and just play. Yep, there you go. That's a better option than just wood or even wool in the same spot. Nicely done by Sammy, always paying attention to those minute details. I like this play from him. Yes, maybe he would have wished to have drawn a little bit better to play a bingo in that spot right now. But I like this choice by Sammy to score nicely and potentially snag a blank, which we can now see he has done here. And I can see a couple bingos right away, like fasciola through this.
Nice. Wow, you're fast with it, Will.
That Sammy could potentially see here. Not sure those will stay on the board necessarily, just because Austin might be looking to play through this L if he has a good play that does so. But maybe if he just fishes the K right here, that will keep this S open for Sammy. So very interesting to see how this is going to proceed.
Looks like I'm not sure what Austin's setting up there.
He has it's Alkine. He's thinking about
Yes,
playing
yes.
Alkine through this L, which is a great idea. That's really the best play through that L. So what do you think, Sam? Alkine seems like a must, right?
Excellent. Yes. Excellent find to put that K on the double letter score, get 30 points just from your K. That seems, unless there's a bingo, which it doesn't look like there is, that is a great find. And we've seen a lot of great plays already in this game. And we'll probably see more.
Yeah. These are two players who are incredibly gifted at finding pretty much every option available to them. So this does block off that S. Not sure. I mean, knowing Sammy, I think there's a great chance that he had already considered that play. So that takes away the S. There is one and only one bingo. It has been spotted in the chat. James Curley points it out, and it's through the R of Hetairai. In fact, it doesn't score that many points. The word in question, parafoil, through this R of Hetairai, making the blank a P. The thing about this, though, Sam, is that you can actually do pretty well just by playing OF if you're Sammy right here. That's not even that much worse than playing the bingo now. So, it wouldn't be the worst bingo for him to whiff on here, just because scoring 33 and giving yourself a chance to maybe hit an even better bingo next turn seems like pretty good upside. That being said, let's see if Sammy spots it. There is an extra benefit to it as well, which is maybe you can grab that second blank on your next draw. This other blank in that pool, you have 2 chances to pick it if you just play OF, whereas you have 7 if you play parafoil for an extra 31 points. Do you have an instinct, Sam, of what you would prefer between those plays?
I would prefer to play the bingo if I saw it. I'd prefer to take the points. AAIL is not the best leave. It's a little vowel heavy. You've got duplicates. That being said, it's not a big mistake if you don't see the bingo or if you pass up the bingo, and maybe it's even a better play. I don't know. But the nice thing about the blank bingos is they're very difficult to find. But if you make a mistake on them, they're not usually too punishing in the sense that you're going to have another opportunity next turn. Usually it's not a huge mistake, as you know, Will, to miss one of those blank bingos. Unlike, say, a natural bingo. You can imagine if Sammy had missed smudge, he's making some word for 30 points, and he's certainly not guaranteed to bingo next turn. He's actually going to go with quaff, which is a similar idea to of. Unclear if he saw parafoil, of course. I don't think he set it up on his rack. So, I don't mind this play. It's not going to be a massive mistake, but I would, to answer your question, Will, if I saw that bingo and I would have looked there, I don't know if I would have seen it, but I would have played it if I saw it.
Yeah, so there you do see, oh boy, look at that. He has drawn the second blank anyway. So even though he only played 3 tiles, but I guess if you think about it, all else being equal, playing that bingo and then drawing the second blank would have been a huge swing in this game in Sammy's favor. You would see that he would have an extra 30-ish points on the scoreboard, so he'd be nearly even. And then Austin would be, looks like he might be considering playing just hand off of the HA here. That would do a nice job of getting rid of one of his 2 ends. That's definitely his primary objective here. And maybe balancing his rack a little bit better by using the D. So 20 points for him here. But yeah, either way, maybe a slight missed opportunity there for Sammy. Tough one there to spot parafoil. He might not even have thought to look at that R. Maybe he's just looking at the letters in alkyne and correctly deciding that there was nothing available. Now he's got both blanks, and we'll see. It's possible, Sam, that maybe Sammy is going to be patient again and just play something like AY right here for a good score, leaving 2 blanks on his rack.
Now I wouldn't mind a play like that as much, because you almost want to really max out your 2 blanks and try to play something to the triple word and really score well, because they're just so powerful, so valuable. I do want to comment on Austin's play. I think it was a good play. I didn't see much else available. And Liner, of course, a strong leave. He's giving himself the possibility of a bingo. He's drawn a 7-letter word, though it's unlikely that it'll fit anywhere on this board. So, yeah, it's a tough one to spot, to make that blank a P with a bunch of floating letters to look through. And I am seeing a possibility in the chat of affably. That would be a really nice find, making your blanks an F and a B in an affable manner. So that would be good. But again, I don't think if missing this or foregoing this wouldn't be a huge mistake or anything. But this might be a nice play. You'd get your F and your Y in the double word score. So it might be worth playing this.
So the thing about this, though, is that it scores more points here. So it scores 77 points right here. It scores only 74 points to play affably on top of the N of return. But it makes an enormous difference in this precise scenario because Austin would have a place to respond with his 7-letter bingo if Sammy goes for the 3 extra points by playing this down low. So it's a big swing. Sammy is going to opt to just play AY. Whether he saw affably or not, we're not sure. But I actually like this play by him just to stay patient and not open anything new. Makes Austin's next decision a little more difficult. Surely Austin's going to be looking at playing his B in this spot and balancing his rack once again. But Sammy's going to really be trying to get a bingo down that locks up the board once and for all. If he can take a solid lead in this game and bingo in a way that closes the board down, that's going to be what he's looking to achieve here.
Totally agree. I love that play from Sammy. I think he's being patient. Like you said, whether he saw the bingo or not, a bingo like that might not have even been his best option. And a lot of times patience can really win the day in Scrabble. So you can't be patient for too long, but a case like this, you want to wait for the right moment to use those blanks. And like you said, Austin almost surely going to play probably Bell. He already has BEL set up on his rack. It's going to score well. It's going to use that spot where he could have placed his Y to make Joy earlier. And it's a pretty lucrative sort of interior spot to the board that doesn't change things too much and gives him another chance to draw a bingo that does fit somewhere on this board, whether it's parallel to return or through some of those floating letters in alkyne or that are in hetere.
Yeah, as you say, all of those options are available. So right here through this R, the letters here, or parallel to return, definitely a bunch of places where bingos will fit. Sometimes when you fish for bingos and keep those nice bingo leaves, it's not the best idea because there isn't actually any room for that stuff to fit on the board. Not so much the case here. There are, although it's funny, Austin's had a couple good bingo racks and he even has a 7-letter word on his rack right now. But despite the board being relatively open, not super open, there isn't any place for it, but he has to trust that if he makes a fishing play here, the odds are decent that if he draws a bingo, it's going to actually fit. What he doesn't know is that Sammy is sitting on a monstrous rack. We're just going to have to see what Sammy plays. Is he going to continue to play it patient, or will he pull the trigger on a bingo here? He has some options that will allow him to score decently. But yeah, you guys are pointing out some of the words that he does have available. I know somebody's pointed out film card, which would be a very, very stylish bingo to play through this I, which is going to stay open. It is a little risky. I don't think it's exactly the bingo that Sammy wants, Sam, making that big S hook.
It's tough because you're making a big S hook when your opponent's been basically going, well, he will have been going fishing. You'll see, this turn he's spending a long time and he's probably going to play Bell or something. So you might suspect that he has one of those 2 remaining S's. But on the other hand, it would score very well. It would score 86 points. It would surely be better than something like, flamenco, or, it just scores so much. So, by the way, Austin is blocking that R for himself. I realize I said that was a bingo line, but not anymore. I think film card would be worth it unless there's a really nice alternative. But yeah, it's not ideal. You'd love to play an 8-letter word that also scores 86 points, that also is an adjective, maybe ends in IC or something, but you don't get every option available to you. So I think that would be a great find, and would probably, in this case, would almost put the game away, because Austin has drawn that IU combination that is not a very pleasant combination usually to deal with, and he's now got duplicated eyes. So Sammy has the chance, well, not put the game away, he's down by 50 points actually, but to finally seize control of the game with his second bingo.
Yeah, I mean, we can see the truth, which is that Austin does not have one of those two S's. This is from Sammy's POV right now in the top right. So we know that a play like film card is going to put Austin in a world of hurt. He's not drawn what he would have wanted after Bell. He kept a nice balanced leave and drew yet another I and a U to go with it. So yeah, we're going to see what Sammy does here. He has some reasonable options. I would find it a little bit too risky to play my only vowel, but if Sammy really wants to, he could just play FA in the upper corner and hope that he draws one of these many, many I's to come, or even just any other vowel somewhere. So yeah, it's tough. I do think that, the 86 points of film card are just tough. Given that Sammy is now down by 50-ish, you really need, I guess Sammy is patient. That's a hallmark of his style. Also, let's keep in mind that film card with 2 blanks is an extremely high degree of difficulty of a find. So it's not a guarantee that he's even thinking about that. So another tough move. Sammy is, I wonder if he's considering with that FAC combination.
Looks like he wants to play facsimile somewhere on a,
that
which of course doesn't fit anywhere. It's a 9-letter word. You'd need more tiles to. It gets to the. I don't know if he's actually looking at facsimile, but it's getting to the difficulty of this. Oh, is he? No, he's not looking at the blank.
I think it looks like he's not. It looks like he could be, but I don't know.
He might be jotting, because the blank slip's on the left side of the board.
Yeah, you're right.
Jotting on his notepad.
It's his notepad.
Which I do a lot when I have 1 or 2 blanks. I'll jot down alphagrams, making the blank a certain letter. So yeah, it's very tough. Like you said, as you know, you will being the demigod of the blank bingos on Aerolith. With I think we could say Dave Wiegand is kind of the king of the blank bingos on Aerolith, and you're like the prince of it. So it's very difficult to find them. He is going to bingo, but he's not going to bingo with film card. He's going to play flamenco. So he's decided, like you said, now's the time to do it.
This is crazy too, because look at this play, Sam. He's setting up a Z spot. I guess he knows that there's basically no way that Austin would have had a Z on this play. He certainly would have played Bez instead of Bell. So maybe he's thinking, if I set this up for myself, I'm creating another really aggressive situation to surge ahead. Again, I agree with you. Film card probably still to play, but maybe that's guiding some of Sammy's thinking here. I don't think Austin is that likely to have the Z, and I can draw Zen in that spot some of the time. So yikes. Let's see what happens.
I love that point, Will. It's just to really illustrate why Sammy might be concluding that Bez is a word, B-E-Z. So at the very least, you'd think if Austin had the Z, then why wouldn't he have played Bez in that same spot and gotten 20 points for the Z rather than 2 points for the L? And of course, if he had the Z, he might have had something even better than Bez in that spot. So I actually love this play. Of course, film card I think would have been a bit more accurate. It just would have scored 20 more points or whatever it was. But, and he's been rewarded for it immediately. He's drawn the Z. It's not actually going to, he doesn't have that E for Zen, but now he has the Z, and he can, take his time, set himself up in that area. And Austin's in a bit of a, as you said, I think at one point, a bit of a world of hurt. Film card would have put him in a world of hurt with the S hook, but now Austin's got to think, ugh, do I have to waste my turn blocking that area? Do I have to sacrifice some points and some leave value just to block a Z that he might have drawn? So I think it's a great play by Sammy. I think it was better than playing something like Fa to sort of, I don't know, get some positive momentum, I guess, towards the and he's also blocked some bingo lanes, by the way, when he knows that Austin has been fishing. Somewhat fishing.
All true. So I guess from Sammy's perspective now with that Z, though, Austin knows there's only one E also. Yeah. So even if Sammy does have the Z, there's going to be a lot of cases where he can't actually bomb that spot without another E. So maybe Austin will realize that this spot is okay to leave open as long as he makes a fishing play holding an E. That way, if he draws a bingo, he'll play it. And if he draws the Z, he is likelier to play in that spot. So it looks like he's getting ready to play Ruin, which seems like the best of kind of a mediocre load of options here. Ruin would play right here, setting up a couple more decent bingo lines and balancing his rack again. It's not the situation that Austin wants to be in, but he stands a decent chance of getting a bingo down that's going to swing control back to him in this game. So let's see what happens as we go back over to Sammy.
Austin's drawn 3 vowels, first of all, so
yikes.
He's not going to get that bingo down. But as you said, but you were about to say we were going back to Sammy, and the chat has pointed out a really stellar option for Sammy.
Wow. Killer. Yeah. Right? Look at that. Yikes. And he's going to see that every time. And he can even play that without worrying. Oh, there it goes. Beautiful. Swizz. That's phenomenal.
8 points. So he's going to take a commanding lead. And because he was leading slightly even before that. So he could really possibly withstand a bingo. Not that Austin even has one. And he's got that second S to maybe hook flamencos or just to use in general. Of course, an S is almost always a useful tile in Scrabble.
Yeah, that's a great play by Sammy. Of course, it leaves Austin in a world of hurt just because even if Austin fishes with 4 tiles in the bag, he will have ways of playing off a couple of these vowels. The problem is that after Sammy's next play, it doesn't feel that likely that Austin's eventual bingo is going to score enough points to outrun Sammy here, unless it's really, really precise. It's probably going to have to be a triple letter score ending or starting with N. I don't really see a great way for Austin to score enough points otherwise.
Well, Austin's down by 65 points. I think that's a good point. I guess Sammy could play something like, pots and flamencos, use up his high point tiles. He might not be able to make the finish line unless he can score well now. The other thing that I'm worried about is not just outscoring Sammy, but where am I going to put my bingo? Because really the only place to place a bingo, well, there's an I and an N in Ruin, and there's an I in Alkine. So Sammy might easily be able to block the I and the N in Ruin, and it's honestly going to be hard to fit a bingo through an I when you've already got 2 I's yourself, not to mention an overload of vowels. There's also a K. I guess maybe there's some word. I'd almost want to open something up. He's got ale lined up. I wonder if he's considering something like ale, A-I-L, and mal, M-A-L. It's at least it makes you sort of are opening stuff up a little bit. And maybe you can bingo out, get a lucky high scoring bingo and kind of squeak by. So maybe he's considering something else. Of course, we don't know, but that's my other concern here.
I like that idea, just to create an entirely different quadrant of the board where you have some kind of activity. That seems pretty reasonable. The score is not on his side, but maybe it is, to your point, Sam. Maybe it's close enough that with 4 tiles in the bag, if you play 3 of them, leaving 1, if you're Austin, Sammy won't be able to use that many with those 3 T's on his rack. So I'm just wondering, like, what happens if, in this precise scenario, if Austin does this for, what would it be, 11 points, and then Sammy plays pots for 30-ish points right here. How many would that be exactly?
31.
It's 31.
10,
Yeah, so he's going to be up in that case
85.
by 85, and he'll have 3 tiles on his rack. So yeah, maybe you can sometimes, maybe if you get a bingo with the B in it, maybe sometimes you get enough. It could be close. I'm actually not 100% sure.
No, there's another. Well, are there vowels to draw here? He might be drawing some more vowels, so it might be a moot point.
Oh, God.
IU. Yeah, not too many.
You can see his reaction. He just looked at it like, oh, God. Like, again, more of these awful draws. So, yeah, that was rough. Sammy is going to immediately look at those tiles and know that he is home free. He doesn't have anything to worry about whatsoever. So, yeah, yikes. Tough draws for Austin, but really interesting game all around. What a patient performance by Sammy to just really bide his time. I guess he really was aided a little bit by Austin just never connecting on that last bingo despite holding good tiles, but still very, very nice performance by him here.
Yeah, it was a great game, really well played, really fun to watch. Just as a minor point, this is a spread point, but there's some chatter in the chat about maybe Sammy could fish for a bingo himself at this point. Because he sees all those vowels. He can get something like tin pots or nepotist or potence or something. And now there's 2 spots. And of course you can't block both of those spots. So he could just drop his T somewhere. And maybe like if he drew the E, he would certainly have bingos in both spots. And in fact, there is an E in the bag. So if he dropped his T, he's going to get bingos in both spots and he's going to bingo out. But yeah, I like this game. But he's just
flamenco. That would have been funny, but he quickly picked that up. Funny to think about flamenco ending in O, but thanks to that blank, maybe your brain goes haywire for a second. But instead of that fish, which makes a lot of sense, fishing off that T and trying to draw bingos in multiple places, Sammy just playing it safe. In this particular case, yes, he would have drawn bingos in 2 spots, but some of the time you leave some points on the table doing a fish there. I think in general, even then, if there was no, tile in the bag that gives Sammy a bingo, he's probably still playing pots or something like that in the end game. So it doesn't even work out that much worse for him to spend a tile to fish and go into the end game like that. But in any case, we're in the end game. Austin's tiles are terrible, and Sammy, of course, drawing the E from the bag. So this game about to be wrapping up. Austin doesn't even need to think about a sequence here because he knows Sammy's going to go out on his next turn.
Yeah, so Sammy, it probably works out. You'd have to work out the math of that fish because, yeah, like you said, a case like this, now Sammy gets to go out first. He gets to get some extra tiles from Austin, so it'll work out pretty well for him that he played pots. And certainly if he had drawn like another vowel, like an I or a U, it would have worked out better because he wouldn't have bingoed. Also, I wonder if he was thinking of flaming takes that surprise O hook. You can surprise your opponent by turning it into flamingo. So I don't know when he dropped that O if he was somehow conflating that, but of course there was no word he had ending in O. It was probably just dropped the tile wrong or something, but the game is over.
Yep. Final score, 481 for Sammy Okosagah and 403 for Austin Shin, dropping to 3-6. A rough start for Austin, the winner of many a big national level tournament. I wouldn't count him out, but 6 losses this early is tough for him. Again, though, he does embody that, the scoring never stops catchphrase is as much to do about his attitude over the course of a tournament as it is in each individual game. So would never want to count Austin out, not the start that he would want, but nice win by Sammy. And just to give a little sneak preview of round 9, we have an absolute banger between the players who entered day 2 at number 1 and number 2 in the standings, both Nigerian players. The matchup, Wellington Jigare, former world champion, against Edekaro, I believe a multi-time Nigerian champion. So that is an absolute banger. I'm really excited for that game coming up, Sam.
That'll be amazing. Yeah, I can't wait. Wellington played great on stream. I've never seen Edekaro play, so looking forward to it.
Not sure if the players are going to talk about this game at all and give us any insights. It looks like they're mostly just doing the record keeping. There was a lot to talk about here, so maybe we'll cut to the board for just a quick second.
It did look like Sammy briefly pointed to that Z spot in that flamenco and was maybe saying something about that.
Done? Yes.
Oh, all right. Looks like not a lot of discussion going into this game, which is all good. Sometimes not every game warrants a ton of discussion. I think from our POV, there was a lot, but maybe Sammy realizing Austin is a very classy player. He's not going to show any kind of frustration at this point, but maybe Sammy realizing that another loss is not something that Austin necessarily wants to talk about in depth. So in any case, like I said, next round, 2 Nigerian champions, and in Wellington's case, a former world champion. Very exciting matchup. Don't go anywhere, and we will be back with round 10 from the 2020.